The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Joseph Scott Morgan. He's the author of Blood Beneath My Feet. Journey by a Southern Death Investigator. And we're going to be talking to Joseph about the real CSI. You know, we've all seen them on TV, the different CSIs, and how true to life is CSI compared to what really happens in a law enforcement agency. Joseph is a retired medical legal death investigator, and he was also the senior investigator for a Fulton County Medical Examiner's Officer in Atlanta and a forensic investigator with the Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office in New Orleans, conducted more than 7,000 autopsies. He holds a master's degree in forensic science and is now assistant professor of criminal justice and forensics at North Georgia College and State University. His new memoir is Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. And Joseph, welcome to the X Zone.
Hey, Rob. Great to be here. Great to be in the X Zone with you. Thanks for having me.
You know, what is a medical legal investigator, and how is he or she different than a coroner?
Yeah, well, you know, you can work for a coroner's office and certainly be a medical legal death investigator. I started my career with the coroner in the coroner system in Louisiana. In Georgia, we had a bifurcated system where it was a mixture of both a medical examiner system and a coroner system, and it gets kind of convoluted. The big delineation, though, is between the medical legal community and that of law enforcement. If you think of a homicide detective, the homicide detective essentially has one goal, and that goal is to determine, first off, if there's a homicide committed, and if there is, to catch the person that did it. As a medical legal death investigator, our reach and our interest goes far beyond just something as passe as catching bad guys. Because every kind of death that's out there, suicide, homicide, accidental death, you know, industrial accidents, motor vehicle accidents, unexplained natural deaths, you know, recovered bodies, skeletal remains, all of that falls under our purview. We have interest in all of it, but we have really no interest in catching bad guys. We want to find out, first off, what happened to the individual, what brought them to their end, and secondly, who they are. And that's the sum total of what we do. And as a medical legal death investigator, contrary to what you see on television where they have some hot-looking blonde or brunette that goes out into the field that claims to be a forensic pathologist, that doesn't happen. We're actually the eyes and the ears of the forensic pathologist in the field. We go out and bring in data for them and the information for them. And then, in addition to that, contrary to what you see on television, it's generally somebody like me in a large metropolitan area that's going to show up at your door and notify you of a death in your family. I think over the course of my career, I probably made upwards of 2,000 notifications in person, and so that's another part of the job. And then in addition to that, as you previously mentioned, the 7,000 autopsies, I'm also a pathology assistant, so I did that on the side and assisted with autopsy. So you wear kind of a lot of hats. You have to be, a sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, and have an understanding as to the form and function of the practice of forensic science as it relates to death investigation.
All right, Joseph, stand by, good sir. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. Exonation. Joseph Scott Morgan is my special guest. He's the author of Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. His website, www.josephscottmorgan.com. And Joseph and I return on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break as the Exxon continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name's Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Those schoolgirl days of telling tales and biting nails are gone. But in my mind, I know they will still live on and on.
Welcome back, everyone. Joseph Scott Morgan is my special guest. He's the author of a new book entitled Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. For 2 decades, our guest this hour, Joseph Scott Morgan, worked as a medical legal investigator in Atlanta and New Orleans, investigating gruesome scenes Hollywood producers could never even dream up. He's seen the impact death leaves behind, both on loved ones and the victims and the people who spend their lives investigating these tragedies. Once again, his website is www.josephscottmorgan.com. Joseph, whatever inspired you to be a death investigator and, stay around death for so many years?
Yes, Rob, I have a multitude of people that have asked me that question. I even had one guy, after I'd written a book, which is a true memoir, written in a very Southern Gothic voice. He says, you write this memoir and you talk about how dark it was, and you talk about how dangerous it was, and how there was very little redemption in it. Why was it that you chose to be a death investigator? Why did you hang around? And I tell you, still to this day, those are questions that linger in my mind. I still ask myself and explore those questions. It really started with me. I was working in New Orleans as a college student, and I was working at a hospital, and I happened to be working at the hospital where the local parish or county parish, the morgue was under renovation, and they started doing all the autopsies there. And I became friends with the local coroners, investigators, and the forensic pathologists. And de facto, I became like the morgue attendant and began ushering in bodies and whatnot. And I found myself absolutely fascinated by it, and began attending autopsies on my own and learning. And I had a very scientific mind, and the scientific nature of everything, solving the puzzle, really appealed to me. And it was, as it turned out, it was almost like the siren song for me, drawing me closer and closer to the rocks. And it really drew me in at first with, the scientific gymnastics that you had to go through. And plus, I saw myself doing something that no one else was equipped to do, at least what I perceived as emotionally equipped to deal with the things that I would see. And I felt like I was uniquely prepared. And that comes from a very difficult childhood and events that I bore witness to as a child. And I truly thought that I'd convinced myself I'd been prepared my entire life to be able to withstand this just withering, onslaught of death day in and day out, because that's all you see. So I was drawn to it, and I really found that I had an aptitude to it. Became very successful as a death investigator in 2 major cities in the South, and really thought that I was somebody. But death had me fooled.
How did you, as a death investigator, after dealing with over 2,000 notifications to families of somebody that they love has perished, and 7,000 autopsies, how do you deal with this? How do you just at the end of the day shake it off, or do you?
I don't know that there is shaking off that takes place. I have people, and I know a lot of your audience would be interested in this as well, but because of many of the discussions that you guys have on the Egg Zone, I've had many people, say, well, man, you were around so much death, thousands and thousands of dead bodies, for all those years.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see a ghost?
Yeah.
And I categorically, I would say to people, no, I never did. I didn't have anything that convinced me that there were ghosts. But what I was stalked by and plagued by was death. And there was always a perception on my part, and I write about, I anthropomorphize death in my memoir, where death is actually not a character, but a being that actually existed in my life. I could feel death's breath on my neck all the time. And in a very Southern Gothic way, in my mind, I could hear death whispering in my ear, as I bent over another dead body, saying, you see this? This can be you, boy, at any time I want it to happen. And day after day after day, this redundancy of seeing dead bodies, you become progressively more fearful, but then you're aware that there's really nobody else out there that has the level of training that you have, that has the acumen, and that's very arrogant on my part, to do what you're doing. And you set yourself up in this no-win situation. Well, nobody else can do the job, but yet I'm fearful of doing the job. And it's you're really caught in a trap.
How did being a death investigator affect your social life, your family life?
Well, I tell you, give you a little slice of life here. My daughters, who are teenagers now, they've commented to me. They say, "Daddy, when we were kids, we hated to go out to dinner with you. Matter of fact, we hated eating dinner with you, because every time we would eat, you would look at us across the table if we were eating some kind of, a ham or roast or something, or steak, and they'd say, and I would make the comment to them, now chew that up, and not for the regular reasons a parent says this. I would actually tell my kids, I had a 6-year-old that choked to death on a piece of ham, and here I am hammering my kids with this information, and the problem is this: you're always, as a death investigator, you are always living life and actualizing your life through the lens of the potential of death.
Yeah.
This thing that people go about their life where they never think about death, unless the hearse drives by. For me, it was daily. It was daily that this would happen. I could walk into a place like, an office park and go to conduct business in this place, and actually see a woman seated behind a desk. And in my mind, I would flash back to what was referred to in Atlanta as the infamous Buckhead shooting, where we had the day trader that killed like 16 people. And, I can see the ladies, how the ladies sit at desks and they take their shoes off and they're sitting there in their pantyhose, and see the ladies with the bullet holes in their backs. And, and I can visualize that. I can walk into a shop somewhere and imagine somebody coming in and blowing away everybody. When you're exposed to it, day after day, you always live your life in this constant fear that something terrible is going to happen. And so you have to fight with that. You have to fight to be able to relax when you're in public. because you begin to sense how people perceive you.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really, really sad, Rob, is that many times when I was struggling with a lot of stuff I was dealing with and seeing, you would go to a party and people would gather around you and they would say, "Oh, tell us about your job. We found out that you work for the coroner or for the medical examiner, or whatever the case would be." And you would actually think that these people are caring about you. They want to know about you. That's not it. You become entertainment for them. And then you're just kind of left holding the bag, and all you're left with is a bunch of dead bodies and terrible memories.
I understand that there was a time when you were actually locked in a cooler with a pile of decomposing humans.
Yeah, I was.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an interesting story. When I was in New Orleans, which, by the way, for somebody that wants to become a death investigator and work in forensics, New Orleans is this fantastic environment to learn in, and it's a dangerous place.
Mm-hmm.
I love the place. It's my hometown. But because it's an international city, it's an international port, you're there and you're exposed to so many other things that other places would not commonly be exposed to, such as Atlanta. Atlanta's landlocked.
Yes.
In the case with being locked in a cooler with bodies, we'd had a hurricane that had blown in the Gulf, and there was a barge, what's called a jackup barge, which does maintenance work on oil rigs, tried to beat the storm in, and the thing capsized, and it killed all 16 guys on board. Well, it just so happens that our morgue was in a state of disrepair, and we had to rent a refrigerated truck, and we got one, and we started storing the bodies in this place as we were working on them. And for about a week, I stayed inside of the trailer with the bodies, working deep into the night, just trying to get the bodies identified. I won't go into a lot of the gruesome details of things that we had to do, but suffice it to say, it was total exposure for 5 to 6 days, and this is just one instance of when this happened. But in that instance, when I was in there,
mm-hmm.
when the dust settled and we were finally done, and I was able to go and go home, no matter how many showers that I took, baths that I took, I couldn't get rid of the smell. And my scientific mind began to kick in, and I began to think, why is this? And it turned out that at a molecular level, the odor had bonded in my hair, and I literally had to shave my entire body, even the hair from my nose.
Wow.
And in that name of that chapter is called the mustache, and it's kind of a symbolic event, because I had this, back in the 80s, we all had those huge mustaches.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I had this beautiful hair broom, lip broom, and I talk about standing at the mirror and trimming away this mustache and the hair falling into the sink, and that was very emblematic of what death had, was kind of slowly robbing me of my identity and who I was. And in the end, you're just left there, bare bones, and you can't really escape it. And death has a residue. It's a sickly sweet residue that just kind of hangs on you. It doesn't just hang on your physical person; it hangs on your soul. Throughout all these, throughout this cumulative time over 20 years.
Stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, a fascinating hour with a fascinating man. His name is Joseph Scott Morgan. He's the author of Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. His website is www.josephscottmorgan.com. We'll be back on the other side of the news and some words from our fine sponsors as the X-Chronicles newspaper comes out 1 week before Halloween, but that's another spot that we're supposed to do later on. Joseph Scott Morgan and I will return on the other side of this news break with words from our fine sponsors as the X-Zone continues right here from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network.
X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio,
Euro High Definition Radio,
and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035.
Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com.
On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com,
And our website,
www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Try to understand. Try to understand. Try to understand. I'm a magic.
Big wheels keep on turning, carry me home to see my kin.
And welcome back, everyone. The X Chronicles newspaper, which we have been publishing for 20 years now, is going to be available worldwide 1 week before Halloween. Halloween is traditionally our biggest edition that gets the most coverage around the world. And as you know, not only do we have a worldwide subscription, but people within the media also use the X Chronicles newspaper as a source of guests and a source of experts. So let me know if you'd like to get a copy, or you can go online to www.xchronicles-newspaper.com/newspaperstand.htm. My guest this hour is Joseph Scott Morgan. He's a death investigator. He's written a book entitled Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. His website is www.josephscottmorgan.com. Joseph, why did you decide to write your book? And is your book based on fact, or is it a little bit of a novel as well?
Actually, I had there's a New York Times bestselling author that read it named Grant Jerkins, who is pretty well known. He's a fellow Georgian. He read my memoir, and when he read it, he writes very dark fiction work, and he read it, and after he commented, he emailed me and said, I believe that you've created a new genre. And he says, I'd have to refer to this, the only thing I could really refer to it as is a mem noir. He said that he had never read anything like it because it's not like a true crime book, but yet there are elements of true crime. And it's not it's not a fiction book because it's about my life, but it's written in a very Southern Gothic voice. And it's the only voice that I really have. I come from a family of storytellers, and you know, when you're talking about death, it doesn't take too much to kind of light the fire in your brain, particularly if you have real experiences with death. And I blended that with stories from my childhood, and it was a catharsis for me. This is what I would refer to as more of a therapeutic memoir. Grant calls it a mem noir. To be perfectly honest with you, just to give you a tiny bit of background, when I was named, my name Joseph, I was actually named after a great uncle who was a union leader in the South, and he was a homicide victim.
Wow.
And I was named after him, and so I've always felt as though that I was born with this kind of legacy of death that was hung around my neck, and some very tragic things occurred in my family. When my parents were married, when they were teenagers, my father, he tried to get my mother to spontaneously abort by kicking her in the stomach while I was in utero. When I was about 5, my father tried to kill my entire family.
Oh, my Lord.
By shotgunning us. And my grandmother hid me beneath the bed as she called out to Jesus for protection. And so I had that kind of background, you know, coming into this thing when I finally became a death investigator. And, of course, I've got this Southern evangelical grandmother whispering in my ear that she kind of raised me, you know, and she's telling me all the while, you know, baby, God's preparing you for something, you know, and she's you know, saying this to me over and over again. And so when I became an adult and came to maturity, it was kind of like the perfect storm. I had this legacy that was hanging over my shoulder. I had this voice in my ear, and my life intersected with death investigation. And so these things kind of came together, and I began as I began to work, I was, even though I was a scientist by practice, I still viewed my world through this kind of Southern Gothic, evangelically influenced lens, and it put an interesting spin on the way I tell stories, or at least that's what people have told me thus far. And so the book, I had people that have said, has this thing been? Has someone from Hollywood called you? And I'm like, not really. They said, well, it reads like a movie. It reads like a movie. And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of viewed my life that way, and sometimes it seemed so surreal. It seemed like it wasn't happening.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you this. Speaking about Hollywood, how far different is the act of the death investigator from that of the CSI program that we watch on TV? Horatio.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
I get this question a lot, particularly I'm a college professor now, and I get this question a lot from students and from their parents and anyone else that queries me about it. And Hollywood has done a real disservice to those that work in forensics. And I'll give you an example. A lot of the technology that you see that's portrayed in those programs, it's demonstrative of this idea that science will solve all of the problems. Well, science doesn't solve all the problems. Science is merely another tool that is given to us in order for us to exercise our brain and solve the problem ourselves, just with the data it provides. And the idea that, out in East Egypt, some small police department is going to have access to the technology that they portray on TV seems outlandish. But you have to understand, you can drive through any trailer park in North America, and they're going to have a satellite dish attached to their home now. And so these shows come in to East Egypt, and these people in rural locations, they just assume that their local rural police officers going to know what to do, and they're not. They're absolutely not. The other way this does a disservice to forensics is that on many of these programs, I've noticed that they'll take one character, and Hollywood's notorious for this, but they'll take one character and make them a composite. Well, in the case of many of these things, they'll have an individual that, catches the case, investigates the case, collects the evidence, follows up on leads, pursues the bad guy, gets into a gunfight, goes to the lab, processes everything, testifies, gets in a high-speed chase, serves a warrant, and this person is wears all of those hats. And not only when they get to the lab do they do DNA and toxicology, but they're also qualified to do blood spatter, ballistics. They can do it all. And you can go down this litany, and that incorporates about 16 different jobs. And so you have a lot of people that are your supporting cast that are in this environment with you that are kind of toting the line with you. So it really does a disservice, I think, to people in forensics.
After talking to you for nearly 40 minutes now, I've come to the conclusion that you, as a death investigator, become the eyes, the ear, the living part that works for the deceased.
Right, you are. There's an old adage among homicide detectives that we speak for those that can no longer speak for themselves. That's even more so. That's even more true for us as medical legal death investigators, because I have so many young people that I trained over the years. They come in wide-eyed and they think that every case is going to be, the next O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
But Rob, I got to tell you, you hear about all those cases, but you never hear about the little grandma that dies all alone in the house, and her body goes completely unclaimed. It sits in the morgue for 6 months. You try to run down all the leads to try to find a family. They don't hear about the story of the old man that was kicked out of his house, and he's a chronic alcoholic, and he drowns in a mud puddle because he passes out from acute alcohol toxicity.
Yeah.
You don't hear about those stories. And I don't want to sound, I don't know, haughty in any way, but, I was, and there's still people out there doing my job that I formerly performed. We're the only person to document that this person many times existed.
Unbelievable.
And that's a sacred trust, man.
It certainly is.
It really is. We become the historian of record, essentially, because no one else is there to mark their passing. And there are a lot of very sad tales that go along with all of this. It's not just these high-profile, salacious kinds of things that we have, that are the drivers behind a lot of what we do. It's we're there. It's a task, and it's a hell of a burden to have to bear as well.
Now, are you considered to be part of law enforcement as a medical death investigator? Are you a peace officer? Do you have any police powers, or do you work under the coroner's jurisdiction?
And in the U.S., it's dependent upon the jurisdiction that you work in. I'll give you an interesting little quip. For instance, under the British common law system, when we adopted that at our founding as our template, the coroner came along with it. The coroner, people don't realize that the word coroner and the word sheriff are both found. Actually, they're in the Magna Carta. That's how far back these offices go. And the coroner was actually known as the crowner, the representative of the king. And for the coroner, and you'll find this interesting little tidbit, the coroner in most counties is the only person that has the authority to arrest the sheriff.
That's right, yeah.
And if the sheriff is involved in some kind of nefarious behavior, and they're removed from office, it's not the deputy sheriff that steps into the role of sheriff, it's the coroner. And it all depends on what jurisdiction you're in. Some jurisdictions, the medical examiner and the coroner are under the authority to be able to carry firearms. Some never come in contact with a firearm. It all depends on how the state law is put forth. In both the jurisdictions that I worked in, I had the ability to carry a firearm. I had to go through firearms training every year, twice. And Indiana, for instance, which is really oddball because it's under Napoleonic Code, the coroner handled all of the psychiatric committals. So I would actually go out and write committal papers in addition to working as a death investigator.
Wow.
So it's a real oddball kind of world. But I like to think that we are free. We are free from the demands of law enforcement, and we're also free from the demands of, say, for instance, the defense side of the house. We're an objective entity that works through the scientific process. We're not there to argue finer points and how many angels can dance on the head of the pen. We present facts, and you seek the truth, and hopefully that will be sufficient. Hopefully that'll be sufficient.
Over your many years working as a death investigator, you must have come across some very bizarre cases.
Yeah, I did, Rob, and just like with ice cream, everybody's taste runs the gamut. It all depends. Some people would find some things very, very odd, and others that don't find them odd at all. They just kind of accept it as a norm. But when it comes to death, it's very interesting. You find people. It's interesting what kind of positions people will place themselves into, or what kind of positions bodies wind up in, and everything from perpetrators trying to dispose of bodies to individuals that are probably involved in or let's just say, for polite company, sexual activities they should not probably have been involved in, to just the most bizarre, what some people would think act of God events that occur. I know here in Atlanta, I'll say here in Atlanta, I no longer reside in Atlanta, I'm up in the Blue Ridge Mountains now, but we actually worked a case where a guy's on the way to work, Rob, in his car. He's going into work in the evening shift as a computer programmer, and we've got a major 4-lane road, and a guy's in a Cessna, of all things, and he has to put the plane down on the roadway, and he crashes right into the roof of the guy's car. here this guy is just driving. What are the odds? You're driving down the highway and a plane crashes into your car. When working in the morgue, we actually had a ship that was under Liberian registry with a Korean crew coming around the tip of South America. Its port of destination was New Orleans, and coming around the tip, the cook took exception to something that his first mate had said to him, and the cook took a meat cleaver and just chopped this guy up into a million pieces. They took the deceased body and they had these super, super deep freeze things on these ships, put his body into this thing and left it in there for the entire rest of the journey to New Orleans. And of course, when they put in, we were the location that received the body. They contacted us and through an interpreter told us they'd had a homicide, and we, along with the Coast Guard, started an investigation. And when we got the guy's body, we got it back to the morgue. Rob, if you've ever cooked a turkey and you purchase a turkey, you can't just throw it right in the oven. You got to let it thaw out. This guy's body was so frozen, we had to leave it on the autopsy table for over 2 days for it to thaw sufficiently just so that we could open it. So, you have all of these bizarre situations that occur.
Joseph, you and I have to take our final break. Please stand by. Joseph Scott Morgan is our special guest. Exonation, a book that I'm going to get a hold of, that's for sure. Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. JosephScottMorgan.com is the website. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind.
And welcome back, everyone. Our guest this hour, Joseph Scott Morgan, is the author of Blood Beneath My Feet, The Journey of a Southern Death Investigator. Now, his website is www.josephscottmorgan.com. But, Joseph, you also have a couple of Facebook pages that you'd like to let the listeners know about.
Yeah, absolutely. My book has its own Facebook page. It's just simply Blood Beneath My Feet. Please go in there and like it if you get a chance. I update it pretty regularly with events that are coming up and whatnot. And also, I do the same on my personal Facebook. It's just Joseph Scott Morgan on Facebook, and you can check it out there. And be glad to interact with any of your listeners and continue the discussion about death and dying down here in the South.
Now, what message would you like to leave with the listening audience of the Exo Nation tonight, Joseph?
Wow, I think that we need to remain very, very mindful. Let me start by saying that so much ink, I think, over the years has been splashed on pages and words have been said about family members who lose loved ones, and those are truly tragedies, and it's horrible things that occur. And I've borne witness to more than my share. However, I think what I would like for the listeners to always remember is that somewhere out there right now, there is a very scared and lonely and shattered person working as a death investigator that does not believe that anyone else understands or can identify with what they're seeing and what they're having to do and what they're having to deal with on a daily basis. And, we need to remain mindful that death is always kind of breathing down our neck. We need to live every moment, every single moment, because it can visit us. It can visit us at any second. Live every moment to the fullest. I I'm hoping that by virtue of the publication of this book, that an open discussion will begin about how we deal with people that are out there that are in my practice. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2004, and have paid a great price for it, for what I saw, what I bore witness to. And I hope that, that we can stop assuming that just because you're capable, you're academically qualified, and maybe initially emotionally qualified to handle this burden of death investigation, that doesn't mean that you're made to steal, that it's a true burden, and people out there need help. They need help with what they're seeing. But the problem is that most of us are so stalwart that do this job. We're not so inclined to admit our weakness most of the time. And at some point in time, I had to admit my weakness, admit that I wasn't made to steal, that I wasn't created in this world to be around decomposing bodies.
I don't think anybody is. Right? Joseph, I want to thank you ever so much. I'm sorry, my friend. We're going to have you back on to further this discussion, because I agree with you, my friend, that we have to talk about this and give credit where credit is due. I know as a police officer, you guys have earned the respect of every law enforcement officer that has ever had the pleasure of working with you. Joseph, take care of yourself. Exo Nation, Joseph Scott Morgan has been my guest. www.josephscottmorgan.com. I'll be back after the news at 6.5 minutes past the hour. Don't go away.